Hey guys, we get to another episode of When the Scriptures Become Real. It's kind of podcast where we learn, where we study, where we grow, where we try to become the best versions of ourselves as we can as we continue to serve our Lord. Can you guys find the podcast on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast? We're just so thankful you guys are here, that you guys have found us, and that you guys are with us today. All right, guys, I'm really excited about this because this is going to kind of be like a callback episode, okay? So you're going to see that this is going to call back to our Ruth and Boaz series that we did, which, by the way, that has been the #1 series that we've done. I mean, your interaction for that, your anticipation for that each week for those 6 weeks that we did it was absolutely incredible. So if you haven't gone back to listen to that, go back and listen to the Ruth and Boaz series. Really enjoyed doing that with you guys. Now that was fun as we studied. But naturally, as you study the Bible, which is so beautiful about it, is even as in depth as you get, you still don't have time to look at something else, and you see something else, and you hear something else that causes you to study more. And that's what this is. And so we're going to go back to Ruth chapter 2, and we're going to look at some ideas. But as we talk about this is going to be such a great addition to what we've already covered. So I'm really thankful that we can go back and look at this. Also, before we dive back into this, if you're watching the video portion, and if you're not, I'm trying to describe this, you may be asking, why is there a bag of flour on your desk as you're podcasting this right now? This is not just a random prop, right? No one left me just a random thing of flour, which if they did, that'd be cool. But I promise this has meaning, okay? So we will explain this later, okay? We will explain. I'm glad you're observant, right? We'll explain why this thing of flour is here, okay? So here's how we kind of want to start our conversation, right? If you're in the gym, if you're walking, if you're in a group study with people, if you're in the car, here's how we want to start our convo as we get this going. When you talk about the idea of friendship, I think the root of friendship is a lost art. Well, Jordan, how could you say that, right? I got friends, you got friends, they got friends, right? We got friends, right? If you got the Good Burger reference there, right? So we all got friends, right? So how can you say there's no friends, right? I've got friends and they've got friends. So how is that a lost art if people are making friends all the time? Well, notice I didn't say friendship is a lost art. Notice the root of it is a lost art. When you really look at Ruth chapter 2 and you look at things again from Ruth's eyes and you look at it from Boaz's eyes, the way that God orchestrates the root of the beginning of this friendship is absolutely incredible. And I didn't give it enough time and I didn't give it enough credit as we studied this earlier. So that's why I want to go back and do this again, because this is obviously helped and encouraged me as I've had the opportunity to study this. And I hope that this will do the same thing for you and maybe cause you to think as well, okay? So the root of this is absolutely incredible. So the topic of what we're going to be covering in Ruth chapter 2 is gleaning friendships. Gleaning friendships, okay? So as we dive into this, before we can understand and go back to the text and the time of Judges in the book of Ruth chapter 2, we got to go back quickly just so you can understand a little bit about gleaning. Before we understand the friendship aspect of this, we got to understand the gleaning aspect of this, okay? We really want to let the Bible paint the picture, okay? So go to Leviticus 19 first, okay? We'll go back to Ruth in a second. Leviticus 19, and let's start in verse number 9, okay? Leviticus 19, starting in verse 9. Okay, so watch what it says here, okay? Watch the law that's said about gleaning. Leviticus 19, beginning in verse 9. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest. And you shall not glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather every grape of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God. Now let's do some connecting real quick. So as we connect these dots, think about Ruth at this time. Ruth is not only just poor, because if she was rich, she wouldn't be gleaning. So she's obviously poor. And they're also in a famine, remember? And they're also in the time of Judges where men wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. So now she's in a bad situation there, but not only is she poor, she's also a stranger. Well, how do we know that? Because what is Ruth, the book, why does it always describe her as? Ruth the Moabitess. So does she technically belong there in Bethlehem? So what is she to everybody else? She's a stranger. Now, let's switch the perspective to Naomi for a second. She's poor because if she was rich, then she wouldn't have okayed Ruth to go glean. So she understands that poor aspect. But again, Naomi is from here, but notice she feels like a stranger here because she left and came back. So you understand how the Bible's painting this picture for us, okay? So the law was when you reap your fields, don't even take your own gleanings. And we'll talk about the difference between reaping and gleaning in a second. But don't even take that because I want you to leave that for the poor and the stranger. Quickly, go to Leviticus 23. Okay? Leviticus 23 and look at verse 22. Watch how this connects to 19. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly reap the corners of your field when you reap, nor shall you gather any. Notice, it says gather none, no gleaning from your harvest. You will leave them for the poor and you will leave them for the stranger. I am the Lord your God. Now, we have to understand quickly because I want you to get this idea. And we're gonna hit this once we hit Ruth chapter 2. There is a major difference between reaping and gleaning. Two different things. Same field, two different things. Okay. So now we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But let's go to Ruth chapter 2. We'll understand that difference in a second. But I want to get to the text. So let's dive back into the time of the judges here, back to Ruth chapter 2, and let's understand the root of these gleaning friendships here. Now, if you're taking notes, here's kind of our first kind of point we want to build on. And as we look at these points, each one sees the perspective of Ruth, and it also sees the same perspective from Boaz. Okay. So we're going to look at this from Ruth's perspective first. So the root of these gleaning friendships, where does it begin? Like, where does it begin to really build a friendship rooted within God being the root of it? How does it start? Right? Does it start because I like the same things as you? Does it start because I look like you? Does it start because we're in the same place right now? Does it start because we go to the same place? What is the root of friendship? It's being observant. Okay, that's the root of it. Number one is being observant. Now, let's look at this from Ruth's lens first. Let's put on her glasses. Verse 1 of chapter 2. There was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth. Circle, highlight, do what you got to do. That's huge there. Circle that. A man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Ruth, watch how it describes her now. Watch how this connects to Leviticus 23 and 19. Ruth the Moabitess. So what does that imply? That she's a poor and a stranger. Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, now watch this. Now what is the root of godly friendship? Where does it begin? Notice Ruth doesn't even know Boaz yet. Doesn't even know him yet. Doesn't even know he exists yet. So where does the root of this friendship start? It starts with her being observant with her life. See, a lot of times what we're doing as we're living this life, all of us have had expectation. And with expectation with life and with expectation with people, what we've done, I believe, at times, is we've had these expectations that what we've wanted other people to do for me, or what we've wanted this job to provide for me, or this church to provide for me, or this family, or this girl, or this guy. Well, we wanted them to provide something for me, right? So then when that didn't happen, and maybe that didn't happen multiple times for you, then what we've become is in this life, we've become kind of cynical to where it's not like you have abandoned God, but you're also not living for him either. So now we're just sitting here and we're kind of expecting something amazing to happen. Remember in the movie The Incredibles, right? Remember when Mr. Incredible came home, just got fired from work, had a terrible day, giant guy gets out of his car. He sees the kid right there. The kid knows he's Mr. Incredible. And he says, "What are you looking at, kid?" And the kid's like, "Well, I don't know. I guess I was waiting for something amazing." So that's how we're living life at times. It's like, well, I'm just waiting on something amazing to happen tomorrow. Obviously, I mean, what does the Bible say? The Bible says to be still and know that I am God. So I'm just going to wait on something amazing. Maybe something great's going to happen tomorrow, or maybe next month, or maybe next year, or maybe when I'm this age, or maybe when I get out of here, or maybe when I get this job, or maybe when I have this much money, or maybe when I get a house, or maybe when I get kids, or maybe so we're waiting on whatever you think in your mind. We're waiting on something amazing to happen, when really the root and the basis of friendship with God and other people begins with me being observant in my own life. So notice what is Ruth doing? Does Ruth have problems? Yeah. Is Ruth grieving? Yes. Does she have answers to things in her life right now? No. But what is she doing? Being a Moabite woman, she's doing what she knows what to do. So watch her request. So Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field now watch what she says. Notice what words she brings up. Circle, highlight, do what you got to do here. Let me go to the field and let me glean heads of grain." Notice she didn't say let me reap. She says let me glean. And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." Watch verse 3. Then she left, she went, and she gleaned in the field. What does your Bible say? After the reapers. Now, let's paint this picture. Imagine we're in a field, right? We've all seen vineyards, maybe orchards that you've been to. We have an orchard here, right? So imagine you're in the orchard. Essentially, if I take you to an orchard today, okay, and let's say we're picking apples, right? And we're walking through the orchard and we pick 2 or 3 apples off the tree, we're reapers. So essentially, we see that the fruit is ready to be picked. So therefore, I see the fruit, boom, I pick it, I put it in the basket, we get it together, we have a great time. So we're essentially reapers. Gleaners are 2 different things. If you've ever been to an orchard and you walk through the aisles of that orchard, as you pick the fruit off of the tree, I guarantee if you look down at the root of the tree, there's good and bad apples all around that tree. So what gleaners would do as reapers are picking fruit, grapes, wheat in real time, then the gleaners are coming behind them. So they're picking up essentially the scraps of what's happening. So gleaning is actually harder physical work than reaping is. So notice what Ruth is doing. She says, "Let me go do this." So the basis of her friendship with Naomi first, but the basis of how her friendship with Boaz is going to build is she in her own individual life. She's not sitting there waiting for something amazing to happen. She's doing what she knows what to do. Please just let me go. I see that you need help. And notice, she's being observant with other people. So Ruth is not in this for me. Let me go glean so I can get bread for me. Let me go glean so I can get fruit and grapes for me. Notice, who is she thinking about? Naomi. So notice the basis of friendship starts with being observant from her perspective. You see that? So now look at this as we keep reading. She left, she went, and she gleaned in the field after the reapers. Okay. And she happened to come to the part of the field that belonged to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. I love this. See, here's what we can do. At the beginning of verse 2 and 3, right, when she sees things going terribly in her life, she easily could have taken the same attitude that Naomi had. Well, just call me Mara. Just call me bitter. Things just aren't working out. Sometimes we do the same things in our lives too. Man, I'm just a single lady. Things just aren't working out. And then we make the joke, well, I'll just be single like Paul was. You see, when people say stuff like that, there's always a little bit of truth and sarcasm in that. Paul wasn't even saying it for reasons like that, but we say it for reasons because, well, I'll just be single like Jesus was, or I'll be single like Paul was, or I'll be single like, well, really, what does that show? Sometimes it shows that we're not being observant enough. We're not serving enough. So now, when you look at Ruth, what we tend to do in those situations where we find ourselves, we'll use scripture and we'll warp it. So we'll see situations like Naomi. Well, I mean, the Bible says, be still and know that I am God. So, I mean, I guess I just wait for something amazing to happen. Remember when the Israelites came out of Egypt, and as Moses is sitting there with his staff, and before he splits the Red Sea, you remember what he said? He said, watch, be still, and watch the salvation of the Lord. And as he splits the Red Sea, and as they sit there and they watch that, what would have happened if the Israelites just would have sat there and just watched it? They wouldn't have moved. They would have died, because who's chasing them? The Egyptians. So our idea, we take that too literal. Be still and know that I am God. All right, so I guess I should just do nothing, and I should just wait for something amazing to happen. So I'll just sit here and just wait. I'll be a good person, but I'll sit here and just wait for something amazing to happen. I'll never talk. I'll never do anything. I'll just sit here and wait for something amazing to happen. Well, think about, what did Ruth do? She did what she knew what to do. So now, for us, what can I do right now? What can you do right now? Well, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I could do that. As you are going, go make disciples. Yeah, I could do that. Love the brethren. I could do that too. Serve one another. Don't think too highly of yourself. I can do that too. So notice, when we do what Jesus said, as we're doing, that's technically still us being still. But a lot of us are just being still and being still, rather than doing, and that in God's eyes is being still. So now notice, what is Ruth doing? She's doing exactly what God, the God that she doesn't even know yet, she's doing what he wants her to do. How absolutely. So she's being observant. So that's from Ruth's point of view. Now let's switch glasses and let's go to Boaz. Verse 4. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, the house of bread, right? He came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, remember, reapers are different than gleaners. So what did he say to the reapers? The Lord. Isn't it interesting that Ruth was observant, and she wouldn't have happened to be at Boaz's field if she wasn't observant to Naomi's needs? So is it possible that things aren't happening, quote unquote, for you right now is because you stopped being observant? Things haven't happened for me, so therefore I'm not going to be observant to literally, it takes skill, and I'm still learning, right? I don't have this down perfect. It takes skill in your own life. And I want you to sit there and think about your life right now. Think about your job. Think about how busy you are. Think about all the stuff you got going on. Think about all the stress that you got. Think about all the questions you got. Think about all these things that are happening in just your personal life. Did you know that it takes discipline and it takes skill to be observant in somebody else's life? Literally, how many of us have just stopped and just looked and said, you know what? I haven't talked to so-and-so lately. Let me make sure they're okay. It takes, and you might think it, and a lot of us think it, but we don't do it. So now what have we not learned? We don't even understand the root of friendship. The root of it is learning to be observant that somebody else has a need outside of me, outside of my disappointments, outside of what never worked out for me. Somebody else out here in the world has a need. And this is why, and again, like I say this because you guys are so great with the podcast. This is why the podcast started. One person. I don't care if one person listens or 1,000 or 3,000 people listen, one person has a need. So why not think outside of ourselves and our disappointment and what may not be working and take some time to literally open up our eyes and see somebody else needs help? So notice on Ruth's side, it's working because if she didn't do that for Naomi, she doesn't happen to go to Boaz's field. And what is Boaz doing? Boaz comes back from Bethlehem, and what is he? He's observant too, because he's looking at his field, a man of great wealth, verse 1. He's looking at his field, and notice what is the first thing he says out of his mouth? Yahweh, Jehovah. The first thing the man says is God. And he's being observant because he wants them to know that it's not my wealth of why you can reap in my field. It's not my wealth that you can glean after my reapers. God be with all of you. How amazing is that? So look at what's being built here. So I want you to notice, remember when we were in school, we had those like magnetic connectors and we can build stuff. So I want you to imagine if one person, if Ruth was off, if Boaz was off, that connection's not happening. Because Ruth, if she wouldn't have been observant of Naomi, she's not there in the field. If Boaz is not observant about God and his laws, Leviticus 19:23, and observant with showing people God, he's not there at that time either. So I want you to notice about your individual life. Things may not be working the way you want them to, is because you stop looking. You stop being observant on how many people need help. And notice, Ruth is not doing stuff for Ruth. Boaz is not doing stuff for Boaz. They're doing stuff to serve other people, and that's it. So without them having an observant attitude, they don't click. So what is the root and what is the basis of gleaning friendships? Each party has to be observant. If they're not observant, can people still get together? There's no doubt. Can people still get married? No doubt. Can people be friends? No doubt. But is it the same? Is it the same? So notice they're building something. God is building something special. So notice from Boaz's point of view, watch how observant he is. The Lord be with you. They answered him and they said, the Lord bless you. So now he's observant of them. So now as we're learning to build these gleaning friendships, is it possible that the friendship, you don't even have friends in life now? Imagine that. Like, think about that for a second. Like, I don't even have friends. Like, I know people, but I don't have friends anymore. You know why that might be the case? It's because you stop being observant. And you let what's happened to you make you so bitter that you don't want to look anymore. You don't want to look to see, how can I help somebody today? You know what's pretty cool? When I see couples, or when I see like older ministers and elders and whatever the case might be, when I just sit there and watch them, and I see them watch them help people and do what they do, you know what all of them can do? All of them have the ability to just in a split second, no matter what's going on in their own personal life, they have the ability to stop and in that moment be able to separate from their life and be totally invested, even if it's for like 5 minutes, to be totally invested in the life of somebody else just for a moment. But a lot of times what we do, a lot of times what I can do, what others can do, what you could do, is we use our busyness as an excuse not to do that. And I just don't think that that's something that God's going to accept out of me. And maybe you think differently, but having the ability, and that's what I love about Jesus too. You think about John 5, right? When crowds are following him, even as Jesus is just traveling. When Jesus and the disciples are traveling from one point to another, have you noticed that there's times where he specifically says, hey, we need to stop here. Well, we're not at our destination yet. We got miles before we even get. I know, but I need to go see him. So we're stopping here. So Jesus had the ability to do that too. Jesus had things to do, but he said, I need to stop. The woman at the well, you guys go into town. I'll be here. Someone's going to come here. I need to stop and talk to her. I think we've lost the ability to be observant and look and see. I need to text him real quick. I need to just give him a call real quick. I need to send them, let me stop. I need to write them a letter real quick. I need to go and visit them really quick. You know, it's the ability to be observant. That's where true godly friendship starts. It's the root of it is not because I like the same things as you. It's not because I like you. It's not because we're the same. It's because the observant mind was there for me and it was there for you. Now imagine, they don't even know this yet, but Ruth and Boaz coming together, they're not even looking at this from a relationship perspective at all. Especially from Boaz's perspective, he's not looking at this point in time. He's not looking at Ruth as a potential, oh, wow, who is that reaping in my field? Who's that gleaning in my field right now? Like, let me show God real quick to them and let's see if she notices me. Like, Boaz is not even thinking that way. He's just serving just for the sake of this, the right thing to do. Like, that's a beautiful thing. And that's where friendships are built. It's built on the service of God. That's why I'm friends with you. We looked at that with David and Jonathan, didn't we? It's the same concept. So both of them are observant. Makes sense so far? Okay. Now, not only were both of them observant, but as we keep walking through the text, verse 5, they both asked the right questions. They both asked the right questions. Now, notice this from Boaz's perspective. Verse 6. Verse 6. So the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered and said, the end of verse 5. Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? Now, again, like we talked about before we got to this point, from Boaz's perspective, he's not looking and seeing. Now, could there have been a direct physical attraction to her? Maybe. I'm not going to say there was. I'm not going to say that there wasn't. Is that possible? Absolutely. But from Boaz's perspective, he's not asking who is that so he can get interest in her. He's asking that because notice, what is he saying? He said, I've got all these people to take care of. I need to make sure all these people are taken care of. I know all these people. Who is that? Is she taken care of? Is there something that we can do? Is there something how we can serve her? Is there some way how we can protect her? That's how he's thinking. He's not thinking about, let me do these nice things. Let me proclaim God's name so she could be impressed with me. That's not what he's doing. And just for more proof, Boaz, as we're going to see later, Boaz, again, look quickly. I want you to see it. Ruth 3. Here's how else we know that at this point, Boaz is not thinking about her that way, even if there could have been physical attraction, because of verse 10 of Ruth 3. So when Ruth actually began talking to him, notice his response. Then he said, blessed are you, O Lord, my daughter. Circle or highlight that, my daughter. For you have shown me more kindness at the end than at the beginning, that you did not go after younger men, whether they were rich or poor. So what did Boaz understand? He understood he was older. I'm doing this because this is the right thing to do. Is she okay? Does she need help? People that are with me that happen to be in my field, they're going to be taken care of. I don't know who that is. I need to know if she's taken care of. He's not looking at this as let me get to know her, because he even thought you could have went after younger men. I'm older. What you have, you wouldn't talk to me like I'm an older person. You probably got younger guys going after you, right? So again, and notice the phrase he uses with her. He says, "My daughter." This language, this is more of an authority figure. So he's saying my daughter as in a protective state. He's not saying this in a almost like a courting state. He's saying you say my daughter in a protective manner. So what is Boaz doing? Boaz is just being observant. He's just doing the right thing. So now notice, now he's asking the right questions. Who is this? Verse 6. So the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered and said, it is a young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And then she said, this is what the reaper, the person in charge of the reaper said that she said. She said, please let me glean and let me gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and she's continued from morning until now, though she rested a little bit in the house. So just as a side note, we don't know if this is necessarily true, but I think this is a cool little detail if this is true. So as the man in charge of the reapers, as he's giving his report to Boaz, at this point, he could be saying the young woman sitting over there in the house right now, or the tent, as better translated, sitting in the tent, she wanted to glean and she's been working all morning. She's been working really hard. When you came, she just happens to be resting, but she's been working. So that's what that can mean as well. Okay. Now, as we look at this, notice what it says. Verse 7 or verse 8. Then Boaz said to Ruth, watch how he addresses her. You will listen. What does he say? Circle or highlight that. My daughter. What does he say in chapter 3? My daughter. So was Boaz doing all of this stuff just to impress her? No. Question, guys. And you got to be honest. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Into your late teenage years, into your 20s, into your 30s. Man, like if I song lead in front of all these people and I sound pretty good, like I think she's going to like that. Man, if I get up here and I preach and I do really good and I have so much bravado and I move my hands and I have such great points and my voice is so great and everybody says how great of a job I did and my suit looks great that day and my hair looks great, like I think she's going to notice. Man, if I show up to the stuff that she goes to, right? If I go to the lectureships, if I go to all this stuff, if I go to the youth rallies, if I go to the college stuff, if I go to Bible camps, if I do the stuff that she does, and if I do some stuff there, like she's got to notice me, right? Guys, even if you do good things for God to be noticed like that, even to somebody like that, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You shouldn't actually be doing it at all. So notice, Boaz is asking the right questions, but notice, is Boaz asking questions so that Ruth can know him? Boaz is asking questions so he can make sure she's just taken care of. I just want to make sure you're safe. Did you know that I believe that when we talk about gleaning friendships, guys, there's a beauty and there's a purity about the reason why I'm friends with you or getting to know you or wanting to get to know you. It's not because I hope down the line we could be something. Now, is it sinful or is it wrong if the friendship turns into something else? Absolutely not. It does here. But what is the root of why I'm friends with you? What is the root of why we begin talking? What is the root of why I enjoy your company? It's because I'm just trying to show you God and you're trying to show God to me. The basis of our gleaning friendship is God. It has nothing to do with me as an individual. It has nothing to do with you as an individual. It's about me and you talking about how great God has been and how I can serve him, how you can serve him, and then how we can serve him together. That's why I said the root of friendship is lost. We've got friends, but maybe it didn't start with the root of it. It's different. This is a different level of friendship. It's different. So now, let's continue. Verse 8. You will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not go glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young man not to touch you? When you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. Now, let's paint this picture. Remember, what time are we living in right now? We're living in the time of the judges where men did whatever they wanted to do. Whatever they saw was right in their eyes, that's what they did. So we're living in this time currently in the book of Ruth. So now, notice Boaz is just looking at things to make sure she's taken care of. Because what's the first words out of Boaz's mouth? God. What would God want me to do in said situation? God would want me to take care of all these reapers. God would want me to make sure they're taken care of. God would want me to make sure that God is the one that provided for them, not Boaz. So what is Boaz doing? He's just trying to show Ruth the God that he serves. You know, guys, that's where friendship starts, and that's where things past friendship builds. I just want to show you that God is doing all this, not Jordan. God's not doing it. Even if God has done all these things for me, he didn't do it for me. God did that. It was all God. Okay. So now the reason why he protected Ruth from the young men is because young men did whatever they wanted at this time. So now he said, I told them not to do. Now, is Boaz saying that his young men are bad? No, but he's just saying, look, I'm making sure you're extra protected. I'm sure Boaz wouldn't hire terrible men who could hurt his reapers, but he's telling her this to give her extra protection. Okay, that's what he's doing. Then he's also saying, look, even if you need to take a rest, you go get water. You go make sure you're taken care of. So now I want to ask you a question. As Boaz is asking the right questions and he's being observant here, hey, ladies, do you see Boaz trying to promote himself in any way in these verses that we're reading right now? If anything, who is Boaz promoting as he's doing all this? He's promoting the heart and the character of God. You know, ladies, that's what you should be looking for. Not for a guy who just says he's a Christian and shows up to the same Christian stuff you show up to. Not a guy who gets up there and just speaks well, or song leads well, or has a great voice, or does all this stuff. The reason why you're friends, the reason why you build is because of God. But the reason why is that man should show you the character of your father. If he does not show you the character of your father, he could say he's a Christian and show up to these events all day. But again, you're going to see it, and you're going to see it too late. And I've seen way too many situations, and I see situations that I have to deal with now where people are looking at things and they wish they would have saw it earlier. Does he show the character of your father? Is this man, older man, young man, is he perfect? No, and it's wrong for you to expect perfection out of him. He's not perfect. But does he show the character of God? That's different. Those are two different type of guys. Two different type of Christian guys, quote unquote. Okay? Now, as we look at this, verse 10. So now, watch her response. So she fell to her face, talking about Ruth. She bowed to the ground and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me since I'm a foreigner? You know, ladies, the beautiful thing about the character of God, especially with women, when you study Jesus and when you study God's eyes with and towards women, God always sees the ones that aren't noticed. Remember Leah? Leah was hated. Leah couldn't have children. The Bible says, and God saw her in Genesis. God saw that. You think about the woman at the well. God saw her. You know, the beautiful thing about the character of God is a good man will see that you need help. Now, help as in what? Anybody should be able to show the character of God and serve. So if you need God's help, a good man will show you, I just want to show you who God is. I'm not sitting here trying to promote this and hopefully we're in a relationship down the line. No, this is just what God wants me to do. You should be able to take note and see that. Does that make sense? You should be able to take note and see that. So think about Ruth. What is she seeing? She said, why would you even do this? Why would you even I don't understand. Why would you even notice me? That doesn't make sense. I love Boaz's response. How did Boaz, when he enters the scene, what's the first thing he says? God, 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 God. Watch what he says here. Look at his response. Verse 11. Boaz answered and said, it has been fully reported to me, all that you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. Now you've left your father and mother from the land of your birth, and you have come to a people who you did not know before. Sounds like somebody that needs to be served, doesn't it? Not somebody who needs to be, let me make sure, let me romance this person. This sounds like a person that needs to be served, doesn't it? You know, the root of gleaning friendships is me serving you and then you serving me. Did you understand that that's the root of it? Watch what he says, verse 12. The Lord repay you for your work. You see, here's the last bit of our gleaning friendships. It's rooted in being observant on how to serve God and other people. It's rooted in asking the right questions. And it's also rooted when that person doesn't point to how great they are or anyone else is, when that person points to God. So think about what Boaz could have done. This is a situation that could have been a temptation. Boaz, how could you do this? You're such a nice guy. I mean, you're a great Christian guy. You're doing all these great things. Like, all these people, like, they really appreciate all the things you're saying. They appreciate how you do all this stuff. Like, you're a really great guy, Boaz. So what could he have done? I mean, I am pretty great. Like, I did practice a lot on that. You know, I did memorize a lot on that. I mean, I did work for hours on that lesson. You know, I practiced it over and over. I feel like I could do it with my eyes closed. You know, like he could have done a bunch of stuff. Boaz could have made it all about himself. But notice what he did. He said, the Lord repay you for your work. Boaz took all the attention off Boaz. He said, God will repay you. And a full reward will be given to you, not by me. Now, what did verse 1 of chapter 2 say? Boaz is a man of great wealth. But notice, what did Boaz say? Boaz isn't the one that's going to pay you. The Lord God of Israel will give you the reward. Watch this, whose field is Ruth in right now? She's in Boaz's field. Who does Boaz turn it back to? Under his wings, whom you have come for refuge. When a man just talks about God, the reason why we have the opportunity to talk and to serve, God did this. The reason why you feel noticed, it's not me, it's God. The reason why you feel so encouraged by maybe what was said or maybe our conversation or maybe whatever the case might be, God's going to help you. God will do. We need more young men, and ladies, you need to start listening. You need to start listening for more young men who say God's name a lot, not just in prayer, not just at a Devo, not just I'm talking about in normal conversation. Man, God just did great things. You don't have to always have like a giant, let's get our Strong's Concordances out, and let's get our Hebrew lexicons out. Like, you can just say, man, God is doing great things. You need to start talking to men who talk about God and not talk about them. It's a different type of guy, different type of lady too, fellas out there. So notice, Boaz always points to God. So notice what's being built here. A gleaning friendship. Ruth, even though she's picking after the reapers, she's leaving things for Naomi and Boaz to pick up. Boaz, even though he's head over the field, he's leaving things. He's leaving nuggets of truth about God for Ruth to pick up. You see how the friendship is gleaning? You see, each party leaves something for me to pick up. Man, when I get to talk to this, my friend, my preacher friend, down the line, if you're dating somebody, I'm leaving something for her to pick up. and she's leaving something for me to pick up. And it's all on the basis of how amazing God is. You see how different that is? That's why I said the art of gleaning friendships is lost. The root of it is lost. Because how many friendships are really based on this? I think it's based on just doing the same stuff. But it's really not based on the same God. It's different. It's different. So now, 13. She said, "Let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me." What is God's character? What does Paul say in 2 Corinthians chapter 1? The God of all comfort. What did Ruth say Boaz just did for her? You comforted me. Interesting. You comforted me, and you've spoken kindly to your maidservant. Sounds like God's character too. Though I am not like one of your maidservants. That sounds like God's character. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, "Come, eat of the bread and dip your piece in the vinegar." So she sat beside. Now, notice, as she's working all day, she's behind the reapers. Where is she now at the table? She's sitting next to them. It's like God's table, isn't it? You've prepared a table before me. Psalm 23. I want you to sit next to me. How cool is that? Keep reading. It was being passed. The end of verse 14. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her. And she ate, and she was satisfied. Sounds like the character of God. Hunger and thirst after righteousness, and you will be filled. Sounds like this man has the character of God. He doesn't just say he's a Christian and show up to Christian stuff and just check off Christian things. Sounds like this guy actually has the character of God in him. You know, ladies, those are two different type of dudes. There can be a guy who's genuinely just a decent person who doesn't have the character of God in him. You need to be able to see the difference. Guys, the same thing. There's girls that can show up and just do stuff. That's fine. Good, decent people. But she's got to have the character of God in her. Is that girl perfect? No. Is that man perfect? No. And again, I'll say it again. It is unfair and it is wrong for you to believe that they should be and to use their failures against them. That is wrong. But what does he or she have in her, in him? Every time I talk to him, every time I talk to her, you can see the character of God. That's different. That's a different person. But you have to be able to see that. Okay? Verse 15. When she arose up to glean, Boaz commanded the young man, "Let her glean among the sheaves. Do not reproach her." But watch this. "Let grain from the bundles fall purposely just for her. Leave it so that she might glean. Do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. She beat out what she gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Now, let's close right here. Now, I want you to paint this picture. So I wish I had wheat in front of me. But if you've ever seen wheat, look up a picture on Google and imagine what I'm doing here. So when you gather wheat to make bread and get grain, you cut the wheat down, which is hard work. So you got to bend down and you grab bundles of wheat, and it's almost kind of like a scythe, and you cut the bundle down. And as you tie that bundle, right, you tie it up and you have a bundle of wheat. Now, what Boaz is telling the young men to do was, after you get that bundle of wheat, make sure you drop extra for her. So when you pick up that bundle, you put the top half of that wheat, you put it in like a burlap sack, okay? Then after you put it in a burlap sack, notice what it says in verse 17. After she gleaned what they dropped, then she beat that sack. So she beat the wheat. So now as you get a piece of wood or whatever the case might be, you put the wheat in a burlap sack and you just hit it, right? And as you hit it, the grain falls out of that sack, and then you take the burlap sack, and that's what you take home to make bread. Now, normally, go into this thing, right? Here's a bag of wheat here, right? A flour. This is 2 pounds, okay? If you got to watch the video portion, you need to see this because it's pretty cool. This right here in my hands is a normal day's wage, right? So just a normal day where you glean, you reap, you take the wheat, you beat the wheat, and then you make flour out of it. This is what you're bringing home about a day, about 2 pounds. Okay. Now this can make probably maybe a couple loaves of bread, maybe 2, 3, 4 at most, right? Depending on the size. So what Ruth was able to bring home and what Boaz was able to give her, this is normal, okay? This is 2 pounds. What Ruth was able to bring home was 30 pounds. So this is 15 of these bags. So think about the situation we're in. They're in a famine, and they leave the famine, and now they say they could go back to the house of bread. They come back to the house of bread, and as they come to the house of bread, she goes to work, and as she's working, she meets Boaz because Ruth is so focused on helping Naomi. Boaz is focused on showing God to everybody that he meets. He sees that she needs help. He purposely leaves extra, and she leaves with 30 pounds. Did you know that 30 pounds of flour at that time, if she continued to work like that for a week, she would have enough bread for the year? Her situation completely changed. Doesn't that sound like the character of our Father too? A man that's willing to give abundant blessing. And that doesn't always mean he's rich. That doesn't mean he always has a lot of stuff to give you. He's abundant blessing from who he is, from his heart. So if he's a man of God, you will always get the love of God from him. You will always get the love. It will never be fake. It will always be real. You see how that's different? 30 pounds? That's insane. So now think about gleaning friendships. As we're growing with one another, right? And as we try to get better and look at this honestly, if the basis of our friendship starts with me being observant in my life now, and this doesn't always have to be a guy-girl relationship. There's relationships between elders and preachers, and we grow together and we help one another. But regardless of what the setting is, this is a relationship context. But regardless, it should always be, what can I do? How can I stop and serve somebody today? Let me just get out of my own head. Get out of what's not working, what hasn't worked, what you don't see working. Let me get out of my head and figure out what can I do to just encourage somebody. That could be a text. That could be a phone call. That could be a visit. That could be a cup of coffee. That could be going to a movie. That could be singing together. That could be going to their house and just enjoying their company. What can I do to get out of my own self? And maybe the Lord is not happening to put you in places because you've lost the heart to serve. That's the root. The root of gleaning friendships is service. Maybe we're not asking the right questions. Well, I just figured something's just going to work out. Now let's ask questions. What can I do? Do you need something? Could you help me with this? Could we do that? Do you need? I have this idea. Can we go here? Do you need help? Do you need prayer? Sometimes we ask questions, and we don't ask questions for the right reason. Sometimes we ask questions because we know they don't know the answer, and we know the answer. Sometimes we ask questions because we know it's going to confuse them. Why are we asking questions? We need to start asking questions to fulfill real needs. So ask the right questions. And then always each party points back to God. You see how this changes Ruth chapter 2? And you really begin to see that if Ruth 2 is not there, if that is totally erased from scripture, if Ruth chapter 2 is gone, Ruth 3 doesn't happen. The basis of their friendship becoming more, it doesn't even exist because it's not built off the right root. as we study this and as we grow, don't be satisfied. I'm going to say this slow, and those that know me know what I mean. Don't be satisfied with the fact that you just like the same stuff. Don't be satisfied with just because you have similar interests. Don't be satisfied just because you have a good time. Also, don't just be satisfied just because they say they're a Christian either. What do I need to see? Within an imperfect person, within an imperfect man, between an imperfect family, an imperfect elder, an imperfect church, an imperfect woman, whatever the case might be, what can you still see? Man, even though they're not perfect, even though they have sinned, even though you've sinned, they're still trying, and they have the character of God. That is different. That is a different person. Look for that. Gleaning friendships. You see why I say we got to go back? You see why I say we got to go back? I miss all of that when we did that. So again, go back and listen to our Ruth and Boaz series. That was such a fun series. Again, I can't wait to hear your feedback from this. So let me know what you think about this as we dive back in Ruth chapter 2. This was such a great study. Again, these are friendships that I want to keep building with you here. And this is how the podcast was built. It was built on trying to glean friendships and leave things behind. And I've met great people on here, and I look forward to meeting more people. So again, always feel free to reach out. We're here to help. We're here to truly encourage. And I thank you guys for everything that you do for the podcast. You guys are absolutely incredible. So Lord willing, we will be back on Monday with another podcast. Thanks, guys.